Ambrose Derry says rampaging NPP foot soldiers and constituency executives in the regions are not true members of the governing party. Mr. Derry, speaking to reporters in Parliament on Thursday, said the party is unapologetic to party members who are currently standing trial for perpetrating crime. He, however, assured government and the Interior Ministry are committed and working towards creating a safe environment for Ghanaians.
Have issued definite directives that police commanders responsible for various areas where there are acts of vigilantism to either get the culprits, bring them to book, or be sanctioned. That is the arrangement now. And I can assure you that immediately in two places, in Karaga and in Gulu, they have gone after not just mere members of the party, but party executives have been arrested and they're going to the due process. So we are keeping faith with what we are saying. Mr. President says there will be no immunity for anybody when you get involved in vigilantism, regardless of your political or partisan color, and we are pursuing just that. I have been clear in what I've told them, that where there's an act of vigilantism, the commander in charge, no matter the level, must either produce the victims or be sanctioned. So if they know any politician that is making it possible for them to do their work, it's left to them to come forward and state who they are. In any event, they will be sanctioned, and they should know that nobody is going to save them from that sanction. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm not about to indulge in any speculation. It's clear that any commander responsible for an area where there are acts of vigilantism, you either produce the perpetrators or be sanctioned. There is no way that we would condone that. And therefore, how can anybody say that a politician is interfering? And let me tell you why no politician of this government should interfere. Because Mr. President has got a lot of flagship programs that he's launched. Free HHS, one district, one factory, one village, one dam, food for jobs, this is for food and jobs. And we've got whatever, we are expecting private sector to come in. That is why Mr. President has set the standard now that Ghanaians must feel safe. That is a higher standard than whether there's crime or not. I've visited the Western region and Central region. In both cases, the statistics on robbery, on murder, and stealing have all reduced. But the higher standard is that people must feel safe. And in that higher standard, we need the cooperation of the media to help us gauge the feeling of the people. And we need that sort of security for the president's flagship programs to be successful. And I want to emphasize here that no true member of the MPP can go against the president making good his manifesto promises, because they are a subject of social contract between the president and Ghanaians. And every true member of MPP must make sure that the president delivers on his promise. And this promise is a very important promise, that there must be peace and security in Ghana, and people must feel it. And it's a promise that's a prerequisite for other programs thriving. So don't tell me that you are a true member of MPP when you work against the president delivering on this very important point. You cannot be. And therefore, we are unapologetic of making sure that the law would be enforced, that the rule of law would thrive, regardless of whoever is involved. And I believe, and I tell you, that Mr. President would keep his promise, just as he has kept promise in other respects. So, well, I don't know if the arrest of party executive in Karaga and Gulu is talk. That is action. And as I speak to you today, we've got some of our members who have been convicted. What do they have to show us? We have evidence that we have sent anybody who has committed offenses to court, including our own. And we have convictions and we have fines. And as I speak to you, in two areas, it's not talk. They have been arrested in Karaga, they have been arrested in Gulu. In the case of Kyerematen, it was a hoax. There was nothing like that. What is the talk? This is action. And look, we're not about getting involved in any league or competition or mediocrity. We've been in this system. And all of you know what has happened in the past. That's not what we are thinking about. We are thinking about meeting the promises, making good the promises of Mr. President, and that's exactly what we are doing.
Interior Minister Ambrose Derry there speaking on a matter that has come to be, is now being known as the political vigilantism. Whether or not his answer suffices is a conversation that will continue. But Trade and Industry Minister Kyerematen says government is committed and working towards reviving the Komenda Sugar Factory as part of moves to create jobs and boost the economy. Part of the revival plan, according to the minister, is to develop and implement a plantation and an outgrower scheme using the $24.5 million Indian Exim credit facility, which will finance the cultivation of about 40,100 acres of sugar cane in the central region.
The 1D1F initiative is very much on track. You recall that we laid out a program for implementation of the initiative. Initially, we advertised for potential investors to submit an expression of interest, because one thing we need to remember is that this is not designed to be state enterprises that are being established. Government's interest is to support the private sector to make the investments in these district enterprises, and then government will give them the full support. Obviously, if there are districts where it is difficult to identify a particular investor or a promoter, then government can decide to make the initial investment, incubate it, and then after that offload it to investors. But as I speak now, the interest that has been shown in the program has been very significant. As I reported, already over 462 proposals have been analyzed and found to be eligible for support. However, out of that 462 have been analyzed. Okay. Proposals, because we, as I indicated, we made a public outreach to invite potential investors, so they would submit their business proposal. And then out of that, we do the commercial and financial analysis to determine how many of them are potentially feasible.
So after the analysis, how many?
So out of the analysis, about 192 have already been fully analyzed, and that we believe that 102 out of this can move forward for implementation. So basically now what we are engaging with the promoters and also the relevant district assemblies to get a consensus on the implementation arrangements for those district enterprises. And then government will facilitate access to financing to support the implementation.
So those who have shown, that they are viable to kickstart, how many districts are we talking about?
There are 192 proposals that have been found to be, I would say, commercially viable.
From how many districts?
From 102 districts. So you remember that we had indicated earlier on that potentially you can have more than one project being promoted in a district. But the principle is that at least we would support the establishment of one factory in every district.
Kyerematen there. A private estate developer is blaming managers at the Lands Commission for creating a system which frustrates clients. The developer, who spoke to JoyNews on grounds of anonymity, disclosed that he had to offer bribes to officials at the commission before he got his lands document approved. Here's another excerpt from our latest Hotline documentary, Land Wars, which seeks to address the lapses in the country's land administration.
Yayo, as I decide to call him for the purposes of this documentary, spoke to me on the condition of anonymity. The private developer laments how some top directors at the Lands Commission forced him to cough up over 150,000 Ghana cedis in bribe before registering a 60-acre land he legitimately acquired.
I approached the commission with my indentures. Like, look, I want to register this property. I did my application and I got the receipts. Now, here comes the delay, and I keep calling to follow up, and nothing is happening. So I have to get someone in there who can assist me with the follow-ups. And the guy was like, okay, if I can do this for you, I'm taking, give me 25,000 Ghana cedi. I'll do the entire follow-up for you.
25,000 Ghana cedis.
That's just the beginning.
Wow.
I'll do the entire follow-up for you. So what choice do I have? I mean, I have a project coming up, and here I am being held by a government department that is supposed to be backing my business, giving me the support I need as an entrepreneur. It's not coming. So what do I have to do? I said, okay, no problem. Have these 10,000 cedis. Start work. Let me see how far you can get me to. Then I can top up the rest for you. So that's how the whole thing started. So nobody approached me to say, look, pay me this amount of money. Then
the system frustrated you to start paying out?
The system made me do that because I had no choice.
And then you paid and paid and paid.
Yes,
and paid, and now you've gone past 100,000.
Yes, to get my final document. Even the day of picking it, the day of picking my final documents, I still had to make payments.
He also laments how actions of land guards and officials at the Lands Commission influence developers to pay in excess of double the original amount of lands.
But sometimes you end up paying for the same property multiple times. By the time you go there the next day, these men are standing there asking you to vacate the place, and you have no choice than to meet the person who sends those land guards there to renegotiate and make another payment. So it's a whole mess.
The developer also blames the current legislation as a contributing factor to the corrupt practices in the country's land management system.
The system cannot change unless Ghanaians change. When people go to work, they just have to deliver for the reason why they're in the office. But if they will have to frustrate you, something that is supposed to take a few days now takes years. As a business person, how do you know that? You want results. I want to see the law backing the registration process. That look, transfer of property from owner to from vendor to purchaser shouldn't take more than 30 working days, 30 business days. In some countries, once you submit an application in a government office, they have 30 days turnaround period, processing time, by which you should have a response. If that is done in Ghana, it will be so hard for the system to get corrupt.